Hey y'all, my name is Moon the Storyteller, and I'm here, my very first show with Led Bradshaw. He is a comic book creator and writer of a really amazing series that I'm going to get into. But first, I want to just make you all aware of this really special month. You know, we're just coming from February, which is Black History Month, then into March, which was Women's History Month, and now April is Autism Awareness Month. And so I really wanted to bring awareness to this because, you know, all of us, I'm sure all of us have been touched by autism in some way. For me personally, I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years. Even though I know I don't look like it, but I've been in healthcare for 20 plus years. And the last few years as a community health nurse. So I work extensively with the special needs community, especially those on the spectrum. And then my little sister, she also has autism. So this is a really special month for me. And I wanted to showcase a creator who's also bringing awareness to this very complex condition. And that might not even be the right word that I want to use, but that's really all I can think of right now. So I want to introduce Led Bradshaw. So, Led, tell us
Thank
a
you.
little bit about what you've created. You know, and I found you last month. I was telling you before the interview started, the algorithm shows me certain pages and suggests certain pages, and so I stumbled across your page, and right in your log line, you say this is about autism. So I know, but you say it a little bit better than me. So tell us who you are and what your comic book is about.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm Led Bradshaw, and I am the creator of The Adventures of Jake JetPulse. And Jake JetPulse is a very unique story on a lot of different dimensions. Not only is it an epic comic book story of like good and evil, like that classic superhero action, but it's also a comic book universe that was inspired by my son, who is on the autism spectrum. All the characters and events in the story are inspired by his everyday costume play from when he was a little kid. I used what's unique about the comic book is that I took elements of that playtime when he would dress up as this character, and I used it as a means to teach my son about the world. Not only did he learn to read, he learned to write and also like understood the world around him. I used it as a tool that I can also it became a unique way for me to teach others, to educate others about autism spectrum disorder, and also create like an action series that was also great for that can also be enjoyed by neurotypical children.
Mm. That's something that, you know, I personally emerging term, you know, neuro, without getting too medical. That's something that I like. We at growing up, my sister's in her 20s, so we didn't really hear that term, you
Mhm.
know, when we were kind of in the
Right.
peak of her learning how she adapting to her. We didn't, that really wasn't a word. So could
Right.
you explain what neurotypical means for those families who are
Well,
watching, because this
sure.
is something that they could share perhaps with their children who has similar conditions.
Right. Um, I can give my best definition, which is like neurotypical. Like to me, is more of you know children who aren't affected by autism spectrum disorder. I wouldn't say like affected, but the children who are not on the autism spectrum, to be more exact.
Oh, okay.
So when creating, like when creating the story, I wanted to. My idea was to not advertise that the character was autistic. However, what I would do is that I would highlight the traits, like through their personalities.
Mm.
And leave the reader something to think about. That would open like other means of engagement, conversations, things that people would notice based on their mannerisms, or things that they say. So I really carefully paid attention to my son's everyday interactions when he's socializing with his cousins, with his friends. And this was my way of also incorporating a lot of my childhood growing up with my own friends. And then you would see, that way, like the reader, not only just children, but parents, therapists would also see, they would know, our hopes was that someone would notice these certain traits. For instance, Jake wears headphones on his super suit, and these futuristic styles headphones that he wears, because my son Jake, in reality, he has sensory processing disorder, which means that like certain sounds, abrupt sounds, he reacts differently to certain loud sounds. Exactly. Yeah. And the way how they're depicted in the comic is that these headphones are what helps Jake focus his powers. Instead of being used as like a weakness, it's a means to help him focus his powers. And if they malfunction or go out of control, that's when his full powers are, he has to learn how to control them. We didn't want the kryptonite aspect as in Superman, but we wanted people to see that there are certain unique traits, talents, and things that can be celebrated with, children on the autism spectrum. So we wanted to, create these characters with really fantastic abilities. Therefore, that opened the door for any child can pick up this book and they'll take away a really cool action adventure. But then there's there's a few layers underneath it. If you're really paying attention, you'll notice how there's a specific character that doesn't look the others in the eye unless she's really comfortable. They acknowledge nightmares, like or like Jake's Jake's disdain for loud noises, or what it does, how it affects his powers. These are things that we wanted to take into account. Book story that wasn't just niche, just about autism, but a story that one.
And I actually picked up a couple of those nuances that are kind of characteristic of those on the spectrum. One thing about those on the spectrum, in my experience, is that they're a part of the conversation, but they're not a part of the conversation. So they may not be giving you any eye contact. They may be completely they may even appear like they're not even interested in the conversation. But the moment they're needed, they'll answer or do whatever the task is required of them. And that's what I noticed in these earlier scenes in this the one that I purchased, was Jake wasn't. I was like, is he listening? Is he paying attention? And because the others were speaking, were kind of navigating and taking the leadership role. But once the action broke out, Jake was front and center. And I was like, wow, that is storytelling to enter into, bring in real life elements into your writing, which is really hard to do. It's really hard for me to do. And that's why I have an editor, a really cool editor who kind of keeps me grounded. But it's really hard to bring in real life elements, especially for something from a really complex condition, into a story, and then make it fun, make it oh my gosh, what's Jake? Go ahead, Jake. And you want to I can just imagine it's on TV and you're rooting for where Jake come from? Go ahead, Jake. That's how I felt when he started into the action. And so
that's exactly what we wanted. Yes.
Yeah, well, you executed it. You executed it perfectly. And I knew that I would enjoy the story, because when I saw just your log line, I was like, he's gonna be a storyteller. This is gonna be a good story. So I want to go back to the day that you decided to become a storyteller. You mentioned that
Yes.
your inspiration for it was your son, but take us back to that moment when you said, "Okay, I'm gonna write a story."
Wow. That was, I would say, it was my 11th grade English teacher who really brought that out in me. And I really do owe her a lot. And she really encouraged me to write. I believe, um, going back earlier, like when I really started getting heavy in comic book collecting, one of the first comic books that really inspired me was Frank Miller's The Dark Knight Returns.
Mm,
And I really loved how, like, the whole superhero, the tale of the superhero was completely different. We were always used to the superhero always winning, always saving the day. But when you read this book and you see where the trauma of like a hero, especially someone as iconic as Batman, where he fails and you see how it affects him, it really made me look at storytelling like, wow, this is an amazing story. This is really incredible. So I remember I was in the 11th grade and we had to write an essay, a short story or something. And I figured, you know what? I've always been about superheroes. So let me write this one story. And I remember the look on my teacher's face. And she read this thing and I was like, oh no, I'm in trouble. She doesn't like it. Everybody had all these different stories about like or like romantic comedies or things like that.
uh-huh.
And here I come with this really deep M. Night Shyamalan type superhero thing going on. And I'm like 16 years old. And I remember she when everybody's being dismissed, she pulls me to the side and says, this is incredible. She's like, where did you get this idea from? And I'm like, I don't know. It's just something in my head. It just whatever. And she's like, no, but this is really good. I'm really not into superheroes. It's not my thing. But like, I was really caught up in it. Like, have you ever thought about like really writing and like really getting into it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
So she introduced me to like a whole world of like books. And I
mm-hmm,
wasn't like pretty much like all I did was read comic books at the time. But here I am. I'm reading I'm reading War and Peace. I'm reading, I'm reading like the Odyssey of Homer and things like
mm-hmm,
that, and like the hero's journey. And I'm like, wow, this is awesome. And
mm-hmm,
how could I incorporate that into like a really cool story?
mm-hmm.
And but she was the one really that brought it out. And ever since then, like whenever I had an idea, like I would write it down in a notebook. I would come back to it later and then write it again, then read it. And I'm like, that doesn't sound right. And then I got into like going over like plot holes, learning things about like creating a Bible for my story so I could follow along with it. These are all the things that I just picked up along the way, like that really encouraged me. So now I started to take it a lot more seriously, where I started reading more poetry. I started like really like branching out. Like my mind just started to like, what more can I do? And I just really that kick, that inspiration. To be honest with you, I really thought I messed up when I wrote that story. I'm like, oh great, concern as I see when somebody's quietly just doing their thing. And in my head, my inner dialogue is like, she doesn't like it. It's crap. You failed. It's like, like this inside
Wow.
of school. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's funny how that never goes away. What's awakened when we're kids really never goes
Right.
away. And I'm glad you stayed on that path, because this story is something I think that we all need. And there's also, because whether you are in this space or not, autism is going to impact your life in some way, affect you in some way, whether you have a coworker, whether you have a family member, a child,
Yeah.
it's going to affect you. So taking away the stigma of it by
Mhm.
celebrating what makes them unique, I think is a
Right.
start. So, so let's talk a little bit about the story. So, what is the story about? It's called Jake: The Adventures of Jake JetPulse and the JetPulse Squadron. So, first of all, let's talk about the title, and then let's talk about the story.
Sure. Well, the adventures of Jake JetPulse came from it. The character was originally called Ultra Jake when it began, and the story actually comes from a series of art therapy sessions of art therapy exercises that I would do with Jake, that I would introduce into his routine, like for 20 minutes a day. Mm-hmm. And so every day after school, I would help him express himself. He was when he was diagnosed with autism at 3.5, around 4 years old, he had a speech delay, so he had very limited speech and vocabulary at the time. So I thought it'd be very helpful for him to understand like how he was feeling. This would kind of like the tantrums like dissipate, like the meltdowns and such, because he was able to express himself. So what I would do is that I took the elements of a comic book, thought about the comic book as a whole, and really what really goes into really good storytelling. Now, in my previous job, what I used to do before I became a comic book artist was I was a technical writer and a technical illustrator. So I would make instructions for like electronics and things. So I was a very visual person. Do this, press this, do that, and illustrate it visually. So what I would do is I took a comic book because that's what I always knew, and I broke it down into a series of lessons for him. Like today we're going to draw an angry picture. Today we're going to draw a sad picture. We're going to draw a happy one. Now, what color do you think happy is? What color do you think sad is? What color do you think like gloomy or, and I went through all different emotions and colors with him so that he could understand that, okay, or he could associate certain colors with feelings. Mm-hmm. And, this would develop into him like after school. It's like, so how was your day? I would ask him because I always engage him and ask him questions. How was your day? Well, today I feel yellow. Okay, so I knew he was happy.
Oh.
And that really made me feel good. So when I said, okay, we're going to draw a happy picture. What do you think a happy picture looks like? And then let's draw like a sad picture. So as I started doing that, like that was also with to help him understand how would you say, like he needed to understand body language and certain like facial cues he didn't get because he wasn't quite sure if people were angry or sad. So he would ask, "Are you mad, Daddy? Are you sad? Are you?" And he would ask these questions. So I made a note to draw characters with certain facial expressions, and I would embolden the lines and everything so it would draw attention to the character so he could recognize like their facial features. And it's like, do you think this person's happy? Why is this person happy? And I would do things, break them all down, break an entire comic book down into an actual lesson that a 4 or 5 year old could understand. So there was an art therapy lesson that I saw that was really cool. And it was, draw yourself as a superhero. And he took the ball and ran, and he just started drawing himself. And the story, it actually began as Ultra Jake. That was the name of the character. And he would draw this fantastic Ultra Jake character, and then Ultra Jake and his friends come to save the day. And I was like, you know what? That would make a really cool comic. And I started doing my own Ultra Jake, and then sadly, there was someone out there in the world who was using that name. Yeah. But I had already created this character. I was already drawing this character, sketching him up. And I'm like, I'm stuck with this character with a J on his chest. What do I call him? So I, it took me like, I don't know, like at least like a few weeks of like beating my head against the wall. Like, what am I going to call this character? What am I going to call this? And I'm always cruising through Google, looking at YouTube videos, like stuff. And then I came across something really cool. It was how to create a pulse jet. I didn't know what pulse jets are.
Yeah, you have to tell me what that is. I don't know what it is either.
Well, that's going to be a really long definition, but they're very loud. They're small and they're very loud. Like pulse jets, I believe, are what they use to power like drones, not like the small handheld drones, but like larger. Yeah. So I was like, pulse jet. And then one of my friends, a really great photographer, and we were sitting around talking. And I was like, yeah, I thought this Pulse Jet thing was really cool. I was like, yeah, Jake Pulse Jet. And he was like, no, that doesn't roll off the tongue very well. And then we thought about it. We sat there and camped out on this thought over a lot of coffee. So we were really hyper. And because, like, think about all the iconic superheroes, right? Their names kind of just roll right off the tongue.
Mm-hmm.
Peter Parker, Clark Kent, Reed Richards,
Mm-hmm.
So it's got to be something JJ. So we're like, okay, what about Jake JetPulse instead? Let's just reverse the name. It doesn't mean anything, but let's just call it, And I remember going to Jake and I was like, what do you think of this name, Jake? Jake JetPulse. And the moment I said it, he put his fists on his hips and stared up into the sky. And I was like, okay, I think we've got a name.
Oh my
we've got a
goodness.
name.
Oh, that just warms my heart. How old was he at that time, at that point when you finally decided on that title and decided to kind of get this ball rolling?
He was about 6,
Oh,
almost 7 years old.
I can't imagine.
Right.
Oh my goodness.
And he was dressing up as his own character. Like, he had like trunks, closet, we had an entire closet dedicated to all of his costumes. Everything from Wolverine to Power Rangers to every variant of Batman, Superman. And you know what it's like trying to stuff a child into like a tiny Spider-Man costume when it comes. Yeah, it was. And there's like all like the Viking helmets, the enchanted hammers and swords, because he had to have the accessories to go with it. But he really liked dressing up as his own character more than the other characters.
Wow. That's actually very because my younger sister, just from our experience, she attaches herself to certain things. But to this day, we still don't quite know what she truly identifies with. She has certain, stuffed animals. She has certain TV shows that she loves. She has certain behaviors.
Right.
But that in itself, for your son to basically create his own identity, that I don't think people quite realize, being on the spectrum, sometimes that's really hard to do and some never do. So that in itself is just amazing. And it was almost like this was just meant to be,
It feels like it.
Yeah. So I have a question though for you, because I know how my sister is. She did dance. So to this day, my mother has never been allowed to give away those costumes. So has Jake allowed you all to kind of like give those costumes away, or is it still in the closet?
We were able to get rid of maybe a third. It's only because he outgrew them.
Okay.
So because now that Jake is 12, he's almost as tall as I am.
Okay.
So a lot of those costumes, the ones that were just really too tiny, he was like, fine, you could get rid of these. And he really didn't put up much of a fight for that. But there are some that he will not let go of. So he just will not let go of. Right. So I can still use this cape. I can still use this mask. I'm like, okay, no problem. Like, he wanted to, like, this was the time, like, between 7 and like maybe like 10, where he wanted to wear a cape to school. So, and the teachers told him that he could wear a cape to school. But whenever he wanted to go outside, he wanted to wear his cape. I don't mind he's wearing a cape outside, and the kids would look at him funny and laugh. And then I started doing it with him. So,
and some of those kids probably wanted to do it as well. So let's not,
of course,
those kids, this because of peer pressure, they want to act a certain way.
Right.
So that's the main character. So let me try to point out another character. Is this?
Sure.
This is not one of the This is not one of the group yet, right? That she's not a part of the group yet, right?
Should I spoil it for you?
No, because I was.
Okay.
I told you I purposely did not finish reading it because I didn't want to give away the ending. I don't want to show the scene. Oh, I think I can show this scene. So who's the redhead?
Okay. The redhead, that's Miranda Suarez. She's the oldest one of the team, so she's 14. And one of the really cool powers that she has is that she is like, as Jake calls her, like the nightmare queen. She can manifest her nightmares into reality.
Ooh.
So her partner in crime, which Miranda and the Shrive, which is a ghost, and he's also nonverbal, so he doesn't speak, but she's the only one that can hear him because they're tied to the same nightmare realm. So, which is the reason why her eyes are always red. Now, it's a very interesting story because how we created those characters, because Jake used to have a lot of bad nightmares when he was a kid. I guess an overactive imagination, because superheroes was all he ever wanted to talk about. That was his special interest. But he would also have these nightmares where he would just be stirred awake and I would be up all night with him. So I made a note to have him draw his nightmares. You know, the monsters that scare you, like what is it that you see, like the really dark, evil places and stuff. And I wanted him to draw everything. And then we would give them like silly names and powers and things like that, so he could like take back his power, so he wouldn't be afraid of them when he goes to sleep at night. And I would make like a little tiki mask out of like paper plates, and I would tie them to his bed. You know, so because I told him that in the monster realm and, you know, in the nightmare world, you know, monsters don't have mirrors, so they don't know that they're ugly. So if they see another monster, they'll stay away from you. And I would have a little like 99-cent water bottle I would get from the convenience store, fill it full of water. I would spray him before he goes to bed at night. And I'm like, you can't smell this, but monsters can. So you're going to smell like an even bigger monster, so the monsters won't come after you.
Oh, my goodness. Oh.
So all the villains, the creatures that you see in the comic are actually born from his nightmares.
Wow.
So he actually drew those, and that's where they all come from. Everyone from Mars the Troll, who is one of the heroes of the team, to like the goblins, the Goblin Hive Queen. They're all like they're all like from his, you know, from his nightmares.
Wow.
And that's what gave me the idea to create, you know, Miranda and the Shrive, because he was afraid of ghosts. He was afraid of all of those things. So I thought it would be really cool to have a hero on the team who could manifest her nightmares. And so Miranda and the Shrive have their own backstory they were.
Is this who you're talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. So, and he is basically an inspiration from like horror movies that Jake started to like enjoy watching with me. And that's Mars the Troll there, the big guy. He's like, you know, and Miranda the redhead, and her partner the Shrive, who is like the Batman and Robin of like the team.
Okay.
So, right. And I thought it'd be really cool that she could just manifest her nightmares at will.
Wow.
So she could bring anything she wanted to help her fight. And
like
so
Lantern.
this, yeah, and it's really awesome because it's like by having a nonverbal character, and it just added a complete dynamic. Because it's a lot of fun. Their interaction with Miranda and the Shrive is really fun because only she can hear what he's saying. So it adds for some comedic dialogue with her and him, because it's just facial expressions for him, you know, or not facial expressions, but body language. So a lot of that was born by his fear of like horror movies and things like that. I was slowly able to introduce him into that so we could actually tell a really cool story. Plus, like, in order for me to tell a story about a ghost, I had to watch a lot of ghost stories on YouTube. So there was a few nights where I didn't get any sleep myself.
I know. I know that's a fine line. When you doing that research, that's a fine line, you know, getting, you know. Yeah. Now, and then there's one more character here in the group. What's her name? This one, I think.
Oh, Julia. Julia is my favorite. She's my absolute favorite. She's the brainiac of the team. She is basically, I would say, she is like, I don't want to say the know-it-all, but she is exceptionally smart. She's exceptionally gifted when it comes to science and history. She likes to build like fighting robots. She's really good with gadgets and computers. But she has a tendency of not looking people in the eyes when she's speaking, you know, and she's only comfortable with yeah, she's only comfortable with talking to Jake, who she considers like her best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's very abrupt in conversation. You know, she's bubbly, and that's what makes her delivery kind of confusing for others, because you don't know if she's being condescending or she's giving you a compliment. So, and
I
she's
love
such
it.
a fun character to write. And it's the varsity jacket that she wears is basically, the backstory is that it belonged to her brother who went into the military. And ever since he left, you know, because she was so used to being around him, that he left it to her, and she wears it every day for comfort. She will not take it off.
Mm.
So, and the
That's something
uniform that
else.
she wears,
Mm-hmm.
right, the uniform that she wears, that you see, the school uniform that she wears, is kind of my nod to like to Albert Einstein, where it said that he had an entire wardrobe of the same clothes, because it, you know, by having the same clothes, it reduced your time to think about what you were going to wear for the day. So, so it's like she's that kind of smart.
Uh-huh.
So,
I love
so
it.
it is a really cool character.
Wow, that is like, you know, just from the therapy you did with your son, or and
Mhm.
probably you're still doing to some extent, now, to the way you brought these characters to life, and pulled elements from his therapy, from his personality, from his imagination, into and put it all in a story. That is genius. Like, that is storytelling at its finest. And
Thank
as
you.
you were talking about the characters, I was like, wow, this, to see this on TV, to see an actor attack these characters the way that you've really set them up. I mean, that is true storytelling. That's the kind of storytelling that I like, is when there's depth and layers to the characters. And you've done that really well with the dialogue. I mean, because it's a comic book, so it's unless you have action on in every single panel, you have to tell the story sometimes through the dialogue, and you've done a really great job at that. I really liked it. I'm liking it, and I, like I said, though, I stopped purposely in the middle because I have a tendency to tell people the ending of stories. So, um,
I can't wait to hear your thoughts after you've read it all completely. I would love to
I
like to
will.
sit down with you and yes.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And I am gonna do a review. I just haven't. I'm this, like I said, this is my first vlog. I'm going to start
Mhm,
doing these once a month, and do
mhm,
do a little bit more, just dive deep dive, not only into the mainstream comics, but to it for indie comics as
mhm.
well, because I feel like there are a lot of great writers that people don't know about, and that are doing something
Yeah.
with their writing, something bigger than themselves. So I think this is a story that a lot of people need to hear. And I don't have a huge audience, but they gonna know who you are. My little audience gonna know who you are. So speaking of TV shows, movies, let's talk a little bit about Hollywood. What do you think of Hollywood's representation of the autistic spectrum? So yeah, I'm just gonna leave it. I'm
Hmm.
not gonna put my 2 cents in it. I want to hear from you.
Okay. Okay. All right. My input is there are some shows that get it right. There are some shows that I feel maybe, you know, they don't truly like understand like what autism is, because there's a saying that when you've met one person with autism, you've met one person with autism. So it's so intrinsically different for each encounter is going to be different. I mean, sure, there are some similar hallmarks, but not every person is going to act the same.
Mhm.
There's going to be different interests. Like, even like for Jake, for my son, it's the way how he carries himself. You would just think that he's a very curious, mischievous 12-year-old kid, and you're like, you know, why does he do this stuff, or like, why does he act that way? And that's just the way how he is. It's just that's who he is. Like, what you see in the book is pretty much who Jake is.
Mhm.
And I've tried to to really like harness his personality and do it justice, so that when people are reading this, they're really seeing who Jake is. There are I believe like Netflix had a show, Lock and Key, where one of the characters was on the autism spectrum, and it kind of warmed my heart because it because it reminded me a little of like how Jake is, about wanting to do what's right, and being the hero, and the responsibility of like being a hero, and like what it takes to be a hero. And I was like, wow, that's really who Jake is. Somebody who's really honest when he has to be, and it's like that's awesome. I mean, there's like The Good Doctor, like that's on television, and it's like, yeah, we're not every person on the autism spectrum speaks with a robotic monotone, like a vocal pattern, because it's so different. I think I can't say what's good or bad, but I can say that there needs to be more representation, especially being seen from like from more minorities, more like ourselves. I mean, it's like to see like an Afro-Latino superhero on the autism spectrum when I created Jake JetPulse.
Right.
I mean, there's not that many, but there's always room for more.
Right.
And it's like there's so many different dimensions that I would like to see, because everyone has a story to tell. And just with, and just from everyone, I would just love to see more of that. And not so much like, okay, I was watching a cartoon the other day. It's funny because I was flipping through channels. I when I leave, sometimes I leave the television on for the dog when I leave. And it was on one of these children's stations, and one of the characters was like, it's like, use your autism powers and this and that. But they were saying it like over and over and over. It's because of your autism that you're able to do this. I kind of like when you don't have to spell it out. Let the viewer understand like what's going on with the person just through like their everyday nuances or whatever. To me, it was more like a label, like things. I don't know the proper term. Like, it's not on the top of my head right now, but it's like it's like we want to be we want to be immersed in this world, which is the reason why we're watching television, why we watch movies.
Right.
You don't have to spell it out for us. Let us see it and make our own determination, because that's what really is good storytelling. Because I find the characters more endearing when you don't have to explain it. You just have to see it.
Yeah.
And I think like that's what I was looking for. Like I I don't like when like a certain idea, condition, developmental disability or whatever is constantly mentioned. It's like I can see a person like in a wheelchair. I could see a person using a cane, but it doesn't have to, you don't have to constantly tell me why it's there,
Right.
Just show me how capable the person is,
right.
And that's what it is, because I think it's just a label to put on somebody like, oh, they're different. That's not really what my take is of autism acceptance or awareness, but showing it in a level where, people can see this, see these characters, enjoy these characters. And then like, hey, my brother holds his ears when he hears loud noises. Oh, I get why he does that now. I don't have to explain it to you. I just have to show you.
Yeah.
And not only is it like a vehicle to move the story forward, but now you get to see it from a different dimension of how this character handles this certain situation.
Right. And
I like storytelling like that.
I agree. And that was something I didn't want to, spend this time talking about what I think, because you're here as the guest. But I do feel that I don't like the terms normal and special needs, but we use them, especially in the medical field, to obviously communicate with one another. And there's certain, with those terms come certain, care plans and pathways and things of that nature. But in Hollywood, we've had a lot of characters that were on the spectrum. They just never said it, but they were still seen as this like alien being, like, something that I can never be that way. And it still did not, like, one show that I can think of that I absolutely loved was House. He was on the spectrum. Right. Although I don't know if they ever said it, but he was on the spectrum. That doctor, he was on the spectrum. He had the classic behavior, right. And I don't think it was just OCD. I don't think it was just perfection. It was the whole collective, those seasons, he was on the spectrum. So right. I don't think they ever said it. But then, even then, I felt so distant. I felt so disconnected. I liked him. I liked the show. I loved it. I loved the plot twists and all the other stuff and how he figured stuff out. But I never could relate to him. And that's one thing that I feel like you, as you mentioned, I feel that Hollywood could do a better job is I want to be able to relate to these characters. And this comic book, these are teenagers or preteens. I'm not quite sure if they're are they in high school?
Well, yeah, the few of them are, except for except for one. Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, the big one.
Yeah.
They're relatable. Like I'm like, I could totally see myself hanging out with these people if I was back in high school, and that is how you do it. That is the intersection of real life and storytelling. Is can I put myself into this story? Does this story put me in, can I see myself fighting with them? Yes, I can. I can see myself going out for a pizza with them. I can see us, in college together. And I really love this story. And I didn't actually realize how much I would love it. I was like, oh, this is going to be a good story. But I was like, oh my gosh, this is oh my gosh. Like I was surprised about this, how subtle you did the things that you did in this comic book. So I need to go back and buy. This was like what, number 3? This was number 3. So I need to go back and do 1 and 2 so I can really get to know the characters. So, but this storytelling is amazing. And, I call myself Moon the storyteller, because not that I feel like I am the storyteller, but I do have a story. And I value people who take the time to learn how to tell a good story, because everybody has a story, but to tell a good story takes time and patience and some, humanity behind it. So I just love it. And so lastly, thank you. Why should people read? We already talked about it, but I just want to I want to have it for my clip. I want to make it
sure, no problem.
Why should people read The Adventures of Jake JetPulse?
I feel that people would enjoy reading this book, not only for the storytelling, but to see it challenges readers to actually take a glimpse into the world of, and see the world through the eyes, of a child on the autism spectrum. Like, if you really wanted to get an idea of what it's like, a child's imagination, through Jake's eyes, this would be a really great way to introduce them to that. And it's a great way to understand the power of storytelling, that it comes from anyone with a grand story, with a wonderful imagination. It's really, it's a story that comes from a very innocent, a very innocent, pure place. It's coming from the imagination of a child. It's storytelling, it's comic books at its finest. it reminds me of like running to the comic book store and seeing all the other kids crowding around, looking at the latest issues, getting their pick lists from the counter.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I grew up watching like Super Friends and Justice League and the Spider-Man and his amazing friends and all of these cartoons on Saturday mornings. I wanted to create a comic book that kind of harnessed that nostalgia, like that superhero team, like the Power Rangers, and I wanted to detach and break away from like the dark, brooding storytelling.
Mm-hmm.
I, you know, Jake and I did not want to create the next Batman or the next Wolverine. We wanted to create our own superhero on his own path, something that everybody could enjoy. And I really would invite anybody like to pick up a copy, take a look at it, and I would love to hear what they think about this book. I believe that they'll enjoy it.
I think so too. I think that anyone who reads it is going to enjoy it, and especially if they have family members who's on the spectrum, because this story, I saw my sister in this story. I did, even though
That's awesome.
she's always going to need one of us around her. She's always going to have to live with one of us because her function level is not as high as some others on the spectrum. But I saw you gave my sister a voice. When you wrote the story.
Thank you so much. That really means a lot. It really does.
You give children on the spectrum and even young adults and even adults, in their 30s and 40s, you give them a voice. So through this story, and you celebrate the things that makes them unique. I don't like saying things that makes them different. You celebrate the things that make them unique. And so I thank you so much for this story. I can't wait to edit this and get it out there and share it with my community, because this is a story that I think everyone should take the time to read, even if you just get the first issue or the second issue or the third issue or even all three. This is a book that you definitely need to have in your collection that we have on our desk or on our bookshelves. How many books are you going to have in the series?
Oh, we're going to keep going. We're like right now I'm working on issue 4 and 5 together.
Wow.
So we're just going to keep going. As a matter of fact, it's great that you asked that question, because The Adventures of Jake JetPulse is only one chapter out of 5. So there's a prequel and there's 2 other stories that we have yet to tell.
Wow. Can you tell us who will be the center of those stories? Will it be Jake?
Sure. Well, the next set of books, once I have more hands or if Jake's willing to help, is actually a prequel series which talks about the war between the goblins and trolls and how they how they wound up on this world. They're like how their battle began.
Yeah. How are they on Earth? And this is Earth. This is our Earth, right? This is our Earth, our universe. So I'm like, how did they get here? So I was like, maybe just because I just got the 3rd issue and didn't get the 1st and 2nd issue. But yeah. And why, and I gotta, and yeah, that's something I really want to know, because that's gonna be bothering me. So I'm glad I'm still gonna do I'm still, when I get my little extra money, how we have a certain amount of money every month we spend on comics. I'm gonna get issue 1 and 2. And I want to do a review. I want to actually do a review of everything. And it's going to be a good review. I already know it. But I really want to kind of dive deep into the way you tell how you do your pull. And I don't know what the term is, but it's a term that you bring in real life elements and you turn it into a story. But there's an actual term for it. And I'm going to find it. You do that very well, and that's something that a lot of comic book creators, even those writing for the big 2, sometimes I don't see. So
Yeah.
it's I wish more people knew about this story. So I'm going to be a part of that. I'm going to tell everyone I know in my community about this series. And out your IG page. Let's do that. Let's do your call to actions. You remember, this is my first interview.
All right.
So I get so excited. I forget my basic things.
Sure.
Let's talk about how people can support you and support, Jake JetPulse. So what
Sure.
are you doing?
You could learn more about us, learn more about us and our story. Also support us by picking up one of our books on our main website, which is www.jakejetpulse.com. Not only do we have the first 3 comics in the series, but we also do have a series of workbooks for children from K to 2nd grade, which is full of like math, coloring activities and stuff. So there's a little something for everyone. You can also reach us, follow us on Instagram. Our Instagram handle is jetpulse_comics. And we'd love to hear from everyone, to pick up a book, and we'd love to hear everyone's reviews and what they think of the characters. And to tell you the truth, the reviews that we've been getting are really outstanding. It's awesome to hear the positive reviews. You could also find us too on Facebook. So Jake JetPulse Studios is the name of our is our Facebook page. So feel free to join in on the conversations over there. We talk about everything from what's going on in science fiction and things that are going on in the Jake JetPulse universe.
Thank you so much, Led. Thank you so much for taking the time. I know you're very busy. You took the last hour. I thought it was only going to be a 20-minute interview, and it's now it's been 1 hour.
I talk a lot. Sorry.
No. No, this is not. I talk a lot too. We both talk a lot, but that's good because we're talking about something that's meaningful and that everyone needs to hear about. So, and that's autism. So again, this is Led Bradshaw. He's the creator of Jake JetPulse. I didn't want to get the name wrong. He's the creator of Jake JetPulse, and it's now available through his website. So please support this creator. This is a great story. And I can't wait to read the ending. Like I said, I didn't want to read the ending and accidentally give away, but I can't wait to read what happens. And I cannot wait to get the other issues so I can, stay on this journey with Jake. So thank you so much.
Y'all, thank you for having me.
Take care.
All right. Talk to you soon.
Bye.